welcome to Keyhole Conversations. I can't say enough about our guest today. She's a very talented young lady. I stumbled across her blog and I discovered that she was an excellent writer, but she also does a lot of other things. She's a book designer. Her name is Michaela Yoakley, and she's writing in a totally different genre. Thank you for joining us, Michaela.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Would you tell us a little bit about this steampunk that you write in?
It's like science fiction in the Victorian era, like Jules Verne and like
H.G. Wells?
Yeah, and I want to say Edgar Allan Poe because I saw that in a collection of like examples, but I can't think of like one of his stories that would be an example.
I have a question. I understand that you finished this book. Do you plan to go traditional or with Kindle?
I plan to do on Smashwords,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, on Kindle.
Well, that's where we need to tell the folks so they'll know where to find it. It's kind of like in the process now of the being published. So I'll turn you over to Michaela. She selected something from her book to read, and I'm really excited to hear about it. It's really going to be good. Get an example of what steampunk is. All right?
Okay. This is a chapter from my steampunk fantasy, and it's the point of view of my main character, Violet, and it takes place in Lord Godwin's home, he's a professor of magic at the Lyraria University, and Lyraria is the capital of their country, and he brought them back to their home because of their problem that they're having. And he's got a blind daughter, Aurora, who's also a mage. Back at Lord Godwin's home, I sprawled out lazily on the bed in the guest room. Morgan had her back against my head, as if she expected me to support her weight. How selfish of her. If anything, she should be letting me use her as a pillow. That's part of the reason why big dogs are so great. Well, that was nice, Ethan said. He sat on the bed to take his boots off. It feels forever since I could take a hot bath. I snorted. Already? You're such a lightweight. You should probably savor how it feels, because it'll be 3 times as long before you could do it again. That didn't stop you from stealing the bath stuff he let you use. When I was sure he couldn't see me, I grinned. Why should it have? I like the way it smells, thank you very much. Just because people accuse me of acting like a guy doesn't mean I need to smell like one too. I draped my arm over my eyes, blocking out the luminous light that glowed from the ceiling. I wasn't used to staying in a place so fully equipped with electric lights, even though practically every home with a steady income could afford it. That's what I get for sleeping primarily in the woods, I guess. The crushing darkness outside the window didn't help much either. Gas lamp-lit streets didn't help to deter the contrast of absolute night against blinding light. He chuckled lightly. That's a good point, I guess, but I still don't really approve of thievery. Yet you're not stopping me. He laid down next to me, his eyes transfixed on the ceiling. I don't approve of Lord Godwin much either, and frankly, I'd rather sit by and watch you rob him blind instead of helping someone who doesn't deserve it. I couldn't help but laugh. If I had been more aware of it at the time, maybe I could have suppressed it. But as it stood, the laugh came out before I even realized how funny it was. I felt him turn his head to look in my direction. What's so funny? I think you've spent a little too much time with me. I'm starting to rub off on you. It must have been something he needed to think about, because after a short pause, he started to laugh too. Darn, and here I was ready to make the whooshing motion over my head and everything. Probably, yeah. Next time you know, I'll be knocking over old ladies to steal their coin purse, and a scream tore into the room like an explosion. Morgan twisted onto her feet and jumped to the floor. Ethan and I both got up, each of us grabbing the closest weapon we could get our hands on, and ran down the stairs. The scream wasn't the last. We were led down the stairs by a series of short, painful yelps. They were lights leading us through the darkness, taking us by the hand and pulling us where we needed to be. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Shut your mouth. They'll tell the whole world. You've ruined us. We stopped short in the mouth of the parlor, taken aback by the sight that stood before us like a macabre religious art. A harsh yellow light burned through the room from the overturned lamp. Stained glass littered the floor and glistened like diamonds. The 2 vanilla-colored upholstered chairs were knocked over, as if someone had come into the room and thrown one into the other. Aurora was on the floor, blood trailing from the corner of her swollen mouth and a big black bruise sitting on her eye like a crater. Lord Godwin stood over her. shoulders slumped. His hair, which had been coiffed to the point of abnormal perfection earlier, now hung haphazardly in his face. He didn't seem moved at all by the tears that soaked his daughter's face. Instead, he just cursed and struck her with his cane. The gramophone, which had been knocked to the floor, was too afraid to move its needle. It stayed on that one scratchy spot. Hildegard was a bloody, bruised heap on the floor. If I hadn't heard her whimpering, I would have thought she was dead. I bolted into the room and threw Lord Godwin to the wall. The force shook us both, and I buried my feet into the floor to keep steady. "Don't touch her," I shouted. "Ethan, make sure she's okay." He did what I said without question. I kicked Lord Godwin in the gut, and he gasped in pain. I looked over my shoulder at Aurora. Ethan had his hands on her small, delicate shoulders, and for the first time since I met her, she was allowing the help. Her face was soaked in tears, and her eyes were red from them. She tried to wipe her tears without making it look like that's what she was doing, but we knew better. How could he do that? How could he hurt his little girl, let alone his little blind girl? Fresh rage bloomed inside of me, and it crawled into my limbs like thorned vines. I was a puppet to the anger, controlled by invisible strings. I threw him down to the ground and kicked him as hard as I could. He yelled and whined pitifully, but I couldn't stop. I dug my boot in as deep into his ribs as it would go, watching the blood spurt out from behind his teeth and leak all over the floor. I dropped to my knees and held him to the ground by his throat. "Look what you did! Look at her! How could you do this to your own daughter? Does that make you feel like a big, strong man now? Does it?" I was screaming so loud I had gone deaf to my own voice. It was nothing but fuzzy white noise now. My throat had gone raw. All I had was the hatred building up in me, feeding off the very core of who I was. If I wanted to, I could snap his neck like a twig. Yes, it would be so easy. Just one strong twist in the right direction and he'd be nothing more than a troublesome corpse to dispose of. Just one twist. Vi, relax. Ethan's voice was a lifesaver thrown out into the sea. It hooped around me, embracing me like a hug. No, that wasn't just a voice. I cocked my head into the side and saw he was actually doing it. He had his arms around my shoulders, half hugging me and half pulling me off Lord Godwin. His lips uncomfortably close to my ear, whispered softly. "Relax," he said, "relax." My body shook violently, resisting what I knew it needed. I took in several deep breaths, in and out, in and out, in and out. "You need to calm down, Vi. Just breathe." I could feel myself coming down from the anger and hate. Like when you're coming down from a high point in an anxiety attack, this hurt. "She's coming with us." Again he obeyed without question. Before carrying out my order, though, he whispered to me once again, "Just stay calm, Violet. He isn't worth it." "No, he isn't worth it," I nodded. He moved away from me, and I listened as he, Hildegard, and Aurora quickly left the room. That was the first time I felt the wetness of tears on my face. I brought up to wipe them away. But it wasn't a hand, it was a claw. My fingers and nails had both grown without my knowledge. Long hairs had sprouted on my knuckles, and my pigmentation was almost completely black. It was hard to find that blue line on my arms where one color of skin ended and the next began. They were so much more transformed than I usually let them be. On instinct, I ran my tongue along my teeth. 2 of my upper teeth and 2 of my lower teeth had sharpened. The pain of everything returning normal was almost as much as when I changed. I bit it back though, let it grind its razor-sharp teeth against every nerve in my body until all I could do to keep from falling over in pain was to concentrate on my breathing. In and out, Vi. In and out.
Well, Michaela, that really gets a person into that scene and makes us wonder what's going to be happening. Let us have a little secret about some kind of research you did that was very intriguing to you that you didn't know before, and we'll share it with our viewers.
Well, at one point in the story, they have to go into this vast, maze of sewers under a town to look for who they think is the one causing their problem. And I didn't know anything about sewers, at all. So I had to do a lot of research. And I was basically just looking for something that had the look of what I was going for so I could just make it more steampunk, in my mind. And I ended up settling on the sewers of Paris, which I didn't know what they even looked like. And they actually looked really cool. And I made up a lot of the rooms. I don't know what a pump room looks like. And it's probably not as interesting as I made it look, but...
That's why you're a writer.
Yeah.
we want to take these flights of imagination with you, and I really appreciate your being with us today.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy.
Thank you, Michaela, for joining us. I always have to make one mistake. People look for it anymore. Well, that's it for Keyhole Conversations, folks. Be seeing you next week. We have something interesting lined up for you.